Good morning.
Good morning.
So it seems this hard-driving businessman went to the doctor for a checkup. Tests indicated hypertension and exhaustion. You've got to slow down, the doctor told him. Why not take up a hobby to help you relax? Several of my patients enjoy painting. The businessman agreed to try it and left the office. A couple of days later, the doctor telephoned to check out the fellow's progress. "Doc," the man said, "this painting thing is wonderful. I've already created 10 pictures. Oh, yeah, so it looks like we can create stress out of anything, can't we?
Yeah.
Then there were these two heads of state who were discussing the possibility of lasting peace between their nations. One remarked cynically, "The desire for peace does not necessarily ensure it." "Quite true," replied the other. "Neither does the desire for food satisfy your hunger, but at least it gets you started towards a restaurant." Peace. Whether we're talking about ending war or lowering stress or improving relationships with loved ones or inner conflict, is a highly prized and often elusive quality. So today I'm beginning a series called The Path to Peace. For the next few weeks, through messages and our conversations after church, I'd like for us to dive more deeply into the idea and practice of peace. Now, it seems to me that peace is not exactly a thing. It's more like a process or a way of life. So, what is peace? Is it something to be sought no matter what the price? What does it mean to be at peace or to live in peace? And how do any of us begin to achieve that mysterious quality we call inner peace? I've come to believe that the quality of our lives is determined not so much by outer circumstances or conditions, but by the level of inner peace we possess. But I'm not content to think of peace as a passive state, though it may involve inaction. Nor do I think of it as simply the absence of anxiety, though this could certainly be one of its benefits. The inner peace I long for seems to be determined by the degree to which I know and am connected to my true self. The degree to which I can accept outer conditions with equanimity. And the degree to which I'm able to view and interpret life through spiritual eyes. Since the days of anti-war protesting in the Vietnam era, I'm dating myself, I have always been a peace advocate at heart. And yet, I haven't always practiced peace. An experience with Sepp's brother Bernhard years ago, though unsettling, helped to shed light on this incongruity. Bernhard is well known in Austria for his healing work. He has developed a modality that helps people hear the wisdom messages of the body and respond in ways that foster healing. During a session, he told me that he was picking up a lot of anger in me, and that this anger was a considerable burden to my body. I was taken back because I wasn't aware of being angry at anyone. But the moment I said this to Bernhard, I got a flash of insight. And what came out of my mouth next was, "I'm not angry, I'm outraged." I was shocked by my own words, stunned by the truth in them. Tears stood in my eyes as, at that moment, I got in touch with how much pain I was carrying about conditions in our world. Perhaps most of all in our own country. And this was years ago. Sometimes I feel such a disconnect with the values I see being played out. It's like being an alien in an unfamiliar land. And yes, I'm outraged to the point of tears about the greed and violence, about the fear and all the pain, and about the lies and deception I sense all around. In that moment with Bernhard, I realized how desperate I was to do something about it all. And I also saw that this outrage and desperation were robbing me of my peace and sapping my energy. Since then, I've been on a quest for an inner peace that is not passive or compliant or placid, but rather centered and confident. A still core that hums with life and generates healing energy and focused action. I'm on a quest for acceptance of things as they are, coupled with a passion for positive change. When I first asked in prayer to be shown the first step toward developing inner peace of this sort, I instantly received the word priorities. And in a voice said, know your priorities and live by them. Then, perhaps out of a desire to relieve a little of the pressure this caused, the next thought I had was something I remembered hearing from comedian Dave Barry. You know the difference between fathers and mothers. A mother would never even consider dropping the baby to catch a fly ball. Isn't the mind a strange and wondrous thing? Priorities. In business, I was known for being very good at prioritizing. I didn't even know that many people did not find it easy to determine the difference between what is important and what feels urgent. But I saw that many mistakes, those kind that had long-term consequences, had to do with putting too much focus on putting out fires rather than taking consistent action toward the vision and mission. Think about the difference. One is motivated by fear, the other by intention. So does the quality of reacting out of fear ever show up in your life? I remember something my doctor said as I began my recovery from knee surgery a few years ago. I had told him how much I disliked taking medication of all sorts. And here's what he said. Don't chase the pain. It is much harder to get pain under control once it has taken hold. Take your medication on time for the next few days, and it will support a quicker recovery. I had never thought of it that way. Don't chase the pain. Isn't that what we often do? Whether the pain be physical, emotional, or spiritual? So rather than living from crisis to crisis or pain to pain, can we live in a way that supports balance and an overall sense of well-being? I've come to see what this has to do with priorities. When did you last take the time to ask yourself, what are the 4 most important things in my life? In what order would I rank them? If you're like me, I suspect it's been a while. When I sat down to reflect about this, I found it to be quite a challenging journey because my first thoughts were superficial and inauthentic. They were all about responsibilities that I feel I have and roles I've been conditioned and trained to play. But I stayed with it. And as I entered more deeply into my heart with the question, a different set of images began to emerge. For example, my first thought was, well, of course my first priority is my work here at church, right? But that thought would not seem to stay. It soon receded and was replaced by one word flashing in my mind like a neon sign, and that word was health. Okay, I thought, then my second priority is surely work, right? Wrong. The inner neon flashed. Be still. Then my work, right? Wrong again. Number 3, right after self-care was relationships with Seth, with my family and friends. Finally, the word work flashed on the screen. And I asked, what aspect of work? And the words work for peace flashed immediately across my mind. Immediately I felt the truth of this deep in my being. That need to focus, to use my energy like a laser, not a searchlight. Work for peace, out of love, not outrage. In faithful patience, not desperation. Now, my priorities are not the same as yours. You and I may even be frustrated with one another at times because our priorities don't match. But you know, we'll just have to find a way through that. Because in order to enter upon the path to peace, I have to order my life around my priorities, and you have to do the same. And this is a dynamic process, because the whole inner conversation in which each one of us gets clear about our priorities needs to take place again and again. I've noticed that our priorities have a way of shifting as we age and mature, as life situations change. So it's important to periodically revisit that inner conversation and communicate the changes to our loved ones. Because unless we know our true priorities, we are likely to feel scattered and stressed and dissatisfied, even lost. The demands of the world and other people are so compelling. The need to have the approval of a loved one is so seductive. The tyranny of our compulsive drives is so strong. We can easily lose our way. And as soon as we lose touch with what's most important to us as individuals, and most important to the well-being of our closest relationships, we begin to let those other influences direct our choices and actions. Inner peace and peace between us becomes nearly impossible. Stress begins to build. The kind of personal integrity that opens the door to inner peace is a life journey. We're so often driven by our early programming. It's difficult to even be honest about, much less stay connected with our heartfelt priorities. Our minds are berated with messages of guilt and shame and self-doubt. For me, learning to trust my inner truth has been perhaps the greatest leap of faith I have ever experienced. But unless we take that leap, how will we know how best to use our time? How will we hold on to ourselves in relationship with others? How will we figure out what is really ours to do in a world with so many urgent needs? No one can really help us with this quest. Actually, other people's ideas usually serve to confuse us even more. This is a solitary journey. All we can do is encourage one another to stay with it, to trust what our hearts tell us, and let go of the fear. Deep down, I think we often have a hard time even believing that we're entitled to our own priorities. But think about it this way. If we're not honest with ourselves, we cannot possibly fulfill our purpose for being here in this lifetime. Our priorities are God-given, perfect for the part of the evolutionary journey we're to play at this present moment. We wonder, am I selfish for insisting on living my priorities even when they seem to be in opposition to yours, my beloved partner or child or friend? Can we trust each other and spirit enough to know that the way through that allows us to both maintain our personal integrity, self-respect, and harmonious relationship are trusting our priorities? One day I was counseling a young couple, long ago now, and in the course of the conversation, they were about to get married, and in the course of the conversation, the young man started to tell me about his dream of learning to fly airplanes. "Oh no," his bride said, "you know I'd never let you do that. It's way too dangerous." The young man's face fell. "But I've always wanted to fly," he said. But the energy had completely gone out of his voice. To this day, I don't know what happened. I wonder what he decided to do. If you were to visit Unity Village and go to see Charles Fillmore's office, you would find over his doorway a small plaque that says, "To thine own self be true." This saying is almost a cliche, but it speaks to the core of Unity teachings, that there is no separation between our hearts and the heart of God. That God's will is not some distant demand, but a soft yet compelling, intimate voice within, telling us what we already know is our truth. That every one of us can hear this truth if we are willing to listen. So this week, I invite you to step upon your own path to peace by sitting in the stillness with the question, what are my 4 greatest priorities in order of importance? As the inner responses come, wait for the ones that land. Wait for that little tear or the chill or that little surge of excitement or inner knowing. When that happens, write those things down. And the next step is to get really courageous and take a look at how closely your activities and choices are aligned with those priorities. You may get some surprises. I'm sure you'll get some insight. One thing I know for sure, if we want to experience peace, we are going to have to find the willingness to listen and obey our own inner voice. Your head may want to argue. It may try to sabotage with shoulds and oughts, with fears about what others will think. But just remind yourself, Spirit did not plant the shoulds and oughts and fears. People did. 2 poems by William Stafford speak to us about what it means to be true to ourselves. The first refers to our relationship with ourselves, and the second to our relationships with others. The first one, The Way It Is. There's a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you are pursuing. You have to explain about the thread. But it's hard for others to see. While you hold it, you cannot get lost. Tragedies may happen. People may get hurt or die. You may suffer, and you will get old. Nothing you do can stop time's unfolding. But don't ever, ever let go of the thread. And the next, a ritual to read to each other. If you don't know the kind of person I am, and I don't know the kind of person you are, a pattern that others made may prevail in the world, and following the wrong God home, we may miss our star. For there is many a small betrayal in the mind, a shrug that lets the fragile sequence break, sending with shouts the horrible errors of childhood storming out to play through the broken dike. And so, I appeal to a voice, to something shadowy, a remote, important region in all who talk. Though we could fool each other, we should consider lest our mutual life get lost in the dark. It is important that awake people stay awake. Sorry. The signals we give, yes, no, maybe, should be clear. The darkness around us is deep. So today, health is my first priority. Feels good to say it out loud. Saying it out loud every day might support loving care of mind, body, and spirit, don't you think? Interesting. Health seems to have moved into first place. I don't remember thinking about it much when I was younger and totally focused on work and family. But now it's the truth of my being. And unless my actions and choices reflect that priority, there will be no peace for me. Health, my first priority. What's yours? God bless you all.